SOPA was the bill that was intended to curtail online piracy of music and movies, but what it did was basically take a sledgehammer to a problem that needed a scalpel.
There's collateral damage.
We're only a handful of us who said, look, we're not for piracy either, but it makes no sense to destroy the architecture of the internet, the domain name system, and so much that makes it free and open in the name of fighting piracy. And Aaron got that right away.
The freedoms guaranteed in our Constitution, the freedoms our country had been built on, would be suddenly deleted. New technology, instead of bringing us greater freedom, would have snuffed out fundamental rights we'd always taken for granted. And I realized that day that I couldn't let that happen.
I don't think anybody really thought that SOPA could be beaten. I remember him just turning to me and being like, I think we might win this.
Aaron was one of the most prominent people in a community of people who helped lead organizing around social justice issues at the federal level in this country.
It was like Aaron had been striking a match and it was being blown out. Striking another one was being blown out. And finally he'd managed to catch enough kindling that the flame actually caught, and then they turned into this roaring blaze.
Wikipedia went black, Reddit went black, Craigslist went black. The phone lines on Capitol Hill flat out melted. Members of Congress started rushing to issue statements retracting their support for the bill that they were promoting just a couple days ago. And that was when, as hard as it was for me to believe, after all this, we had won. The thing that everyone said was impossible, that some of the biggest companies in the world had written off as kind of a pipe dream, had happened. We did it. We won.
This is a historic week in internet politics, maybe American politics.
The thing that we heard from people in Washington, D.C., from staffers on Capitol Hill was they received more emails and more phone calls on SOPA Blackout Day than they'd ever received about anything. I think that was an extremely exciting moment. This was the moment when the internet had grown up politically.
It's easy sometimes to feel like you're powerless. Like when you come out in the streets and you march and you yell and nobody hears you. But I'm here to tell you today, you are powerful.
Talk about Aaron and what you feel it's most important for people to understand.
I think, there's lots of things to understand, and it's complicated. I think Aaron was interested in making the world a better place and changing the world for the better. And I think that's all that we have to do and can do to remember his legacy.
He took his own life. He committed suicide just over a year ago. Talk about the circumstances leading up to his death, what he was facing.
Well, he was facing trial for on felony charges from the federal government, and a really vindictive and, in many respects, nearly sadistic prosecution by the federal government, and which turned his whole life upside down, drained his financial resources, and terrified him with the prospect of destroying his future.
Noah, you too are a computer programmer. You've grown up in this household with computers since you were tots. Talk about the significance of Aaron's work.
As Ben Wickler is quoted in the movie, Aaron thought very firmly that he should work on what was most important in the world at any given time. And he really felt that he could do this through computers and through technology. And much of his work in the last 4 years had been around this. With Demand Progress and the SOPA protest, he built a whole framework for specifically for Demand Progress, but basically for any activist organization that wants to maintain an email list, wants to be able to send actions to people, and sort of revolutionized this space with technology. In addition to working on things like SecureDrop and
explain what's SecureDrop.
SecureDrop is a tool to protect journalistic sources by allowing them to submit articles anonymously and through an encrypted connection. or documents rather than articles.
Noah, you have organized hackathons. Explain what they are.
After Aaron's death, we decided that there was lots of work still to be done, work specifically that Aaron had touched and work done by people that he had worked with that needed help. And so we organized a number of hackathons to help people figure out what they could do with technology and with activism. So we organized a number of hackathons. The idea is to have it either yearly or twice a year to continue Aaron's legacy and work.
Bob, talk about Aaron's growing up, his worldview. It's a little odd to say, you know, when he's growing up, his worldview as a 5-year-old, but Aaron really did have a worldview.
I don't know, I find these questions a little difficult. I mean, his worldview seemed to me to be normal and ordinary. And when people ask why he acted the way he did, it just seems to me peculiar, because isn't that the way everyone would? He was very curious. He was certainly very interested in computers.
A deep questioner, questioning when he was growing up school and its role.
Well, I don't think that's a particularly deep question. I mean, that's an obvious question. Deep questions are much more serious. They're much more serious deep questions than that. I mean, that's not a deep. That's just clear.
Like father, like son. As Aaron grew older, the kind of work he did, truly remarkable. I mean, one of the founders of Reddit. And moving on, though, to talk about what happened in 2010, how you came to know what happened when Aaron was arrested, and the weight of the state on Aaron.
Well, I had landed in San Francisco for some meetings, and I got a call from my wife that Aaron had been arrested, and was just shattered by that news. I couldn't really think at all the rest of the day, and tried to learn more about what was going on. I guess initially, on the one hand, we were devastated because the notion that Aaron would be arrested and be involved in the criminal justice system was completely incomprehensible. But on the other hand, the notion was that we could get this resolved in some rational way. As time went on, that became clear that it was much more complicated than we'd ever imagined, and much more difficult. And the weight on Aaron in particular was immense as we struggled to try to resolve this.
Explain what you came to understand he did. I mean, when we talk about JSTOR, well, students in college understand what JSTOR is, but most people don't. Explain what it is and what he did.
JSTOR is a repository for scholarly journals. So if you take something like the American Mathematical Association's journal, JSTOR makes that available electronically on a subscription basis to primarily academic libraries.
Now, they didn't produce these articles, right? There are millions of articles that are gathered.
Right. No, the articles are produced for free by the academics, and the journals are edited and produced by the academic societies in general for free. JSTOR is not for profit, but nonetheless, they charge both universities and their subscribers and individual users for access to those journals. So it's very different than, say, a Disney movie where there are people who are paid to produce the content. The people who produce this content are never paid. And I've never met an academic who wants to see their work behind a paywall. The notion that the knowledge of mankind that is provided for free should be behind a paywall is completely wrong.
And explain what Aaron did.
So Aaron downloaded a substantial portion of the JSTOR database, or at least that's what's alleged, onto a computer.